Hello, welcome to the Hotline Live. Merry Christmas to everyone watching and Merry Christmas to Record Sports. Andy Newport and Fraser Wilson, guys. How's it going?
Evening. Not bad, Daniel. Yourself?
I'm very good, thanks. Andy, I understand you for a bit of a mishap.
Yeah, I bent over yesterday and put my back out. Did nothing more than just bent over to pick something up. My back's gone, so Merry Christmas. There you go. 41, and you can't even bend over anymore to pick up Tyler shoelaces with becoming a cropper. So I'm sitting here full of Nurofen and Christmas cheer. So there we go.
Fraser, I hope are you doing any better? Has Santa been better to you?
He's delivered a monster at hangover this morning, but apart from that, all's fine and well, mate. Yes.
Nice one. Yeah. Well, sounds like we're all three of us are full of the Christmas cheer. Brilliant. The one guy who didn't have as good a Christmas as any of us was Philip Clement. You see, that's the kind of links I'm capable of when I put my mind to it. A really bad one for Rangers, Andy. St Mirren's first League One against Rangers in 13 years. I don't even know where to start with, really. I mean, it does come as a bit of a shock because it did feel that Rangers really had turned the corner. They were on a run now, but wasn't to be.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly improved over the last 5-6 weeks, but I don't think anyone would be surprised to see them slipping back into the sort of bad habits of old that have left them now 12 points behind Celtic. So I was on with Keith a couple of days ago discussing a title race, and I said at that point I didn't think that you could call it that. I thought it was all for Rangers to prove in January the 2nd, but first they had to get to January the 2nd, and they failed miserably in that front. Yet again, it's another. I mean, Clement was quite right to point out it was another wasted 45 minutes, but this has been something that's been affecting Rangers all season. I've just looked up the stats. They've made half-time substitutions in 15 of their 29 games this season. Wow. Now, some of those have been injury enforced, but a lot of the times it's been the manager scrambling to get things going, looking for some way to get his team kick-started because they've allowed the first half just to run away with little to nothing happening. So this has been a pattern that's been going on all year. Rangers teams failing to start in the appropriate manner, failing to start with the required energy, the required tempo, the required mindset, and they paid the price for that again. So I think they've only got themselves to blame. The fact that whatever slight faint hopes they had of, perhaps pushing Celtic this season now again look to be over. So yeah, I have a pretty dreadful Boxing Day for Philippe Clement and his team.
As you can probably imagine, a lot of really angry Rangers fans have got in touch with the Hotline Live. Let me hit you with a few of the comments. Alistair says there was no chance of getting back into the title race anyhow, but we should take this opportunity to get a new boss in, give him time to rebuild and prepare a proper challenge for next season. That's plenty, Clement. Over to you, Patrick Stewart. Colin says, utter shambles, no excuse for playing that poorly against any team. We simply struggle in front of goal. Hopefully January we'll buy a new striker and tighten the defence. And this one from John watching live on YouTube. Rangers don't have enough quality in the squad to rotate the team. Clement needs to play his best team for each and every game. And I think that's an important point, Andy, because, I mean, I was surprised yesterday when I saw the Rangers team. Raskin on the bench, and I get that Clement has said, look, if he gets booked, he'll miss the Old Firm game, but the Old Firm game is almost, you could argue, is almost irrelevant now that they lost last night. Surely it's all about here and now. And Danilo's, I thought they need to start Danilo. Danilo, for me, makes such a big difference up front.
Yeah, I mean, Rangers aren't in a situation where they can take any game for granted now. So the fact that they, are trying to keep Nico Raskin safe for January 2nd just meant that they were lacking basically the guy who's been their best player over the last month. Listen, Philippe Clement can argue, obviously can't start the same guys for the 60 games Rangers might perhaps end up playing this season. They can't start the same guys week in, week out. So he has to give other people opportunities. It's down to them to take it. They didn't, that's fair enough. That's fair comment. But in the day, he's from his own perspective, he's now in a situation where, as far as the punters are concerned, and a lot of fans have made up their own minds. You know, he was living on a game-to-game basis. So, for his point of view, every game was a must-win game, and I think you'll now find that a lot of fans now have utterly run out of faith in him. I think they were willing to give him a wee bit of time with the way that the team performed, even in the cup final, losing it. That was a 6 Derby win that they've lost, Derby game that they've lost. So for the fact that they showed us something at Hampden, they took Celtic to all the way to penalties and lost by the thinnest of margins. But I think there's some fans were willing to give him a benefit of the doubt in that sense. But losing last night, I think for many will be the final straw. Whether that's the case with the board, I'm not so sure. I think with Patrick Stewart and Fraser Thornton only just been in the door, I think there might be especially with the Old Firm coming up in a week's time. I think a few of them will be like, well, let's just get through this period before, rushing to make a decision. But I think as far as many of the fans are concerned, that this is the final straw.
Mm-hmm. In fairness, Fraser, I mean, one of the comments we have had sent in, there's been a couple of them. Graham Dogood says he's got Beale's disastrous recruitment to work with. He needs 2 years minimum to sort that mess. I mean, is it all? I mean, it's not all in Clement, but I don't know. It's difficult to see where he goes from here.
It's a fair point, Luke. I think every manager needs a couple of years when they're taking over such a disastrous squad as Philippe Clement's taken over. Unfortunately, he's walked into a club where you don't get that kind of time. History's told us that, isn't it, down the years? I'm with you. I don't quite understand why you can't keep playing your best players week in, week out. 2 games a week, it's not overly burdensome. I mean, we've all spoken about Nico Raskin. He's come in, he's added energy and quality to that midfield. But the big one for me is Danilo, because I think by far and away he's Rangers' best striker. I think in terms of intelligence, in terms of composure, putting the ball in the net, he's looked lively whenever I've seen him. I think his levels above Cyril Dessers is more consistent than Hamza Agamani. And obviously he can play the two of them, as has been shown before. So I just don't understand. I think he went with the wrong team yesterday and it came back to bite him. So that one's on the manager. They don't have a cast of millions like Celtic have got to change the team up as much as maybe he thinks they can. So, yeah, I think it started with the wrong team yesterday. It came back to bite him. In terms of working with the squad, I do agree with that he's still having to work with much of Beale's disastrous 2023 summer recruitment drive. I think like Andrew was saying there, I think Patrick Stewart's going to have to take a bit of time to get a feel for where the club is, where the squad is, where Clement is. The league's gone. The league's been gone for weeks. I was never of the belief for last weekend that there was a title race again. Never. Unless they won every game leading up to January 2nd and then delivered a first defeat at Celtic, Philippe Clement at Ibrox. There wasn't going to be a title race. So that's gone, but they've still got Europe to focus on and then a Scottish Cup run. I would stick with Philippe Clement to the end of the season. Give him another transfer window to try and rubber stamp his team. Because I've said it before, the guy's got pedigree. He's won 3 Belgian titles with 2 different clubs. He cannot be a dud manager. And the league's gone. So I don't really see the point changing manager at this point in the season. It's almost like some people have just been waiting for this latest defeat to come along to pile on to him again. I think it's time for calm heads at Ibrox and see what the next few weeks deliver.
See, in fairness, Andy, I think Fraser makes a good point in the sense that, well, the league is probably gone. And to be fair, St Mirren, I thought were brilliant last night. I thought Olasanya, I mean, it just terrorised proper when he came on but as soon as Balogun went off, that was a big problem. But going back to the Derby game coming up, if Philippe Clement fails to win a 7th Derby, I mean, it's a really simple equation. If you can't beat the other team in Glasgow, you're really struggling. I mean, I struggle to see how he would go on from there.
I've said all along.
Sorry, go on, Fraser.
I was just going to say, I would hate to have to go into that game with no John Souttar or even no Leon Balogun now. I mean, he really does have his hands tied behind his back. It's a different Celtic. I think everyone has to agree. Celtic are levels above, especially in the forward areas. And now if Rangers defenders are falling left, right, and centre, it's a horrible prospect. But look, you're right. He's got to find a way to get that big result, or his head will be on the block. Sorry, Andy, you were going to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, listen, I've been saying a lot of the time in Hotline Live that I think Philippe Clement deserves time. I think he deserves a chance to get his best players back and see where that takes this team. I think you've saw over the last 5 or 6 weeks that when he's got options at the top end of the pitch, his team can be effective and his style of management can be effective. I don't think a lot of the time he's done himself many favours. This insistence and sort of sticking by what the sports scientists do. Listen, I've spoken to plenty of ex-pros that say, no, you can't just rush guys back. You need to follow the science. You need to follow the instructions of the medics who know what they're talking about. But I think at times he's sort of bit his nose off to spite his own face at times with that. I think there's been times where he could have rushed guys back or taken a chance on guys and given himself better options. But yeah, it's just cruel luck. I mean, he's had his whole, what's he been here now, just coming up sort of 14, 15 months. And how many times can he say he's had an entire squad to pick from? He's every one of his best options available. Never, I don't think. I don't think at any point he's ever had a fully fit squad to choose from. So, I mean, that'll be so frustrating. And now, as you say, just as things were looking to pick up, he gets a knock to a key defender on John Souttar. Nana Casemiro, who's starting to show some positive signs. He gets ruled out for the best part of the season. Now Leon Balogun heading into another derby, or even last night when his pace, even at 36, his pace was the key element at the back in terms of dealing with Olasanya and his ability to run away from defenders. And they lose that 20 minutes into the game. They're forced to reshuffle. You've got John Sterling, who's played pretty much everywhere, apart from the goalkeeper, filling in at the centre back. You've Robin Proper, who I think we'll all agree has looked okay the last few weeks, but certainly a ton of pace isn't one of his strengths. So you're looking at him having to come back in, and now in a week's time they're going to be playing Kyogo, play a Celtic team with Kyogo, Maeda, and Kuhn, who have just get absolute legs to burn. So I'm not sure this is the fortune that Philippe Clement has had has been anyway fair. But at the end of the day, he could have recruited centre backs. He could have recruited, in terms of Robin Proper. I mean, I think we've all known that a lack of pace was his big sort of downside, and he's a Philippe Clement signing. So you can talk about Michael Beale and the damage that his recruitment drive did, but Philippe Clement's had a couple of windows to sort of address that, and I still think there's major gaps in that squad of where they could be looking to take Celtic on.
Well, just to finish on Rangers, I mean, Fraser, do you see January the 2nd as pivotal to Clement's future as Rangers manager, or is it really just a case of, as you say, look, stick with him for now, rebuild?
I think in terms of the fans, it is. I know the Old Firm's a different kettle of fish, right? I know you can't go 7 games without beating Celtic. So in terms of that, I think so. I just think that Rangers have sacked as many managers in recent years and not taken any strides forward, that it would just be history repeating itself. And just because you sack one manager, may bring in a worse manager. Who's to say that's going to improve matters? So look, we're almost in a punishment business, punishment sackings. If we can't beat Celtic on January 2nd, maybe it will be time. If you're asking me personally, well, look, if he got scudded off Celtic, that would be a different matter, especially at Ibrox. But as I said, I think I would think give him till the summer and see what he can make of this season, because you could salvage some silverware from it. You could get a remarkably good run in Europe. The league's gone. Just see what he can salvage for this season. I do believe there's a good manager in there. That fundamentally, that's what I believe.
Just to come on for that, Fraz, I mean, I had a look through the stats. It's confused by sort of some of the things like the Glasgow Cup and the Intercity leagues back in the day. But I think it's fair to say that no modern Old Firm manager has ever suffered or even made it to a fourth Old Firm game without winning and still kept his job. So the fact that Clement is now going to 7 tells you something that this is unprecedented. This is uncharted waters in terms of Old Firm managers and a failure to get a result against the main opposition. So, but I mean, I think Rangers fans were willing to accept what happened at Hampden on the basis that there was signs of encouragement. They were able to compete with Celtic over 90 minutes. Okay, they conceded 3 times, but they scored 3 times. They came back twice when their team was down, and as I say, lost by the cruelest of margins. But Old Firm games are for winning. It doesn't matter about performance. Rangers fans would happily accept, and so would Celtic, I imagine as well, that their team playing absolutely terribly in 6 Old Firm games a season if they won them all. I don't think any Old Firm fan would have an issue with that. So if he goes, a good performance in January isn't going to be enough. He has to get a result, I think, in the eyes of supporters. At the end of the day, that is the currency which he has to operate now. It's you can say what you want about Patrick Stewart, about the new board coming in or the new chairman coming in. This has to be, if the fans lose faith in you, then it's a slippery slope from then on in. So I think a win, whether it sees him to the end of the season or not, I think if he doesn't get a result on January 2nd, then things could be looking troublesome for the manager.
Mm-hmm. Guess time will tell. Before the events at the Samisa Stadium last night, it looked like Fraser, the big headline of the day. Go on. I know. I keep getting that wrong. And I said to myself that is it Smythe or Smisa? I went with Smisa. There you go.
One of the comments called Clement Cement there. I noticed that you brought up earlier. We didn't discuss those comments that came in, Daniel.
There's plenty coming in. If people watching at home, we really appreciate it. They definitely keep them coming in. But before Rangers' defeat against St Mirren, it looked, Fraser, like the headline result was going to come from Tynecastle. I know you were there yesterday. Hearts 1, Hibs 2. I took a lot of stick last week for saying on the Hotline Live that as things stand, I think if you put a gun to my head, I'd say Hearts are getting relegated right now. I didn't see much yesterday to dissuade me from that.
I think we all agree. Aye. You can't argue the position they find themselves in. The fact performances have flipped back to where they were at the start of the season after they got an early bounce off of Neil Critchley coming in. Hearts were woeful, apart from maybe a 20-minute spell in the second half after being gifted an equaliser by a bit of madness for Rocky Bashiri. The Hibs were, by a fair distance, deserved winners yesterday at Tynecastle, and it's the first time they've left Gorgie and taken bragging rights back across the city in 5 years since Boxing Day 2019. So it's a monumental result for David Gray, for Hibs, and honestly, the scenes and the way it ended at the end were brilliant. I mean, it's Scotland's best derby now by a country mile, because basically you have 2 sets of fans in the ground, and it was electric for the start. It's 3/4 toxic at the end again, but the other quarter, boy, did they party at the end. It was some scenes. But the game lived up to expectations as well. It got off to a flying start, a couple of VAR interventions, and then Hibs took it to Hearts and were very deserved winners on the day.
We've obviously had plenty of comments in on this one as well. This one from Alex saying, folk blaming Critchley, you can have the best tactical setup in the world. When you've gutless cowards to choose from, you'll get nowhere fast. Andy, watching Hearts, it's a mystery to me, because Critchley, to me, doesn't look like... He kind of looks a bit shell-shocked. He looks like he's come in and he's went, what's going on here? Hang on a minute. But he's not getting much help on the pitch from his players, is he?
Well, I mean, they had picked up a wee bit of late. I mean, I think domestically they've been, since he's come in, largely okay and showing signs of taking steps forward. But that was a huge step backwards yesterday. I mean, they just looked so short in quality all over the pitch. I wasn't really sure what he was trying to do tactically. It looked like the team was outnumbered and mismatched entirely in the midfield. Hibs press just sort of seemed to spook them a lot of the time. They were just ended up going long an awful lot to Lawrence Shankland, who is just so out of form. You can see confidence is an issue for him, and James Wilson up front alongside of him, just, he's a promising player, but I'm not sure he's ready yet to start a game of that magnitude. So they just looked so lost. I mean, and then the changes he made in the second half didn't seem to alter the flow of the game at all. So I mean, again, listen, we've hammered Hibs recruitment down the years of late. It's been nowhere near good enough, and that's why they are where they are on the table. As much as things have picked up, they're up to, I think it's 8th in the table now. I still think a team the size of Hibs, with the budget they have and the fan base they have, the stadium they have, should be a lot higher. They should be in the fight for Europe, if not third place. But Hearts recruitment has been brutal. I mean, they were, as much as last season, they were very good and they deservedly finished well clear on third. It was evident they were overly reliant on Lawrence Shankland's goals. As soon as he's had a dry spell, any attacking intent from this team has just disappeared. So, listen, they've got a lot of work to do in January, but I agree with Fraser that, yourself, Daniel, how can you say they're not in a relegation fight? You're not sitting second bottom on Boxing Day, but it'd be an unlucky turn of events. You're there on merit. The table doesn't lie in that sense. And obviously they've had Europe to contend with, and we know last season that they sort of kicked on after that. But this just feels different. This just feels that they are short in so many areas, defensively, up front, even, and as I say, in the midfield yesterday. So for me, that's a sore one, because there had been that sort of sense of something that Critchley was just getting to grips with things since coming in. But as I say, that's a huge backward step, and it's one that you don't easily recover from when you have your opposition, your main rivals coming. You say, as Fraser saying, partying. You've seen the picture there with the corner flag getting waved about. That's going to be a sore one for a few days. But Hibs have got every right to lap that one up. I know some people might be saying it's a bit early. It's, that's what, 4 wins in 5, is it?
Yep.
Yeah. Defeating that time was against Celtic, obviously. So, but they've had a pretty grim year to date, and plus I think credit to David Gray, because at one stage it looked like he was hanging to his job by his fingernails, but he'll have underlined his position there with he got his tactics spot on last night. Yesterday he worked Hearts out, and he picked the right team, and I thought the way that they set up was absolutely spot on. And Nicky Cadden was doing that left hand side. What a signing he's been. I mean, as I say, we've slaughtered our recruitment for the last wee while, but having his brother doing the wings have been absolutely tremendous for Hibs this season.
Mm-hmm. This is the thing, Fraser. It's the same, by and large, Hearts team that finished third last season by a country mile. How do you account for this awful season they're having?
Well, that is pretty simple. That is Lawrence Shankland's no scoring goals. So the one thing I would say about the recruitment, right? Their 2 best players this season. Hearts fans will agree with us. Well, the majority of them, by country mile, James Penrice, signed in the summer, has been their best player on the left flank. A bit like Nicky Cadden across the city. He's great going forward and has a mean delivery into the box. And Blair Spittle has also been pretty much solid signing for the summer. And key yesterday was a strange decision for Neil Critchley to remove him midway through the second half when he still looked like he had energy in the legs. He doesn't like to give Blair Spittle 90 minutes for some reason. He's not started them in key games in Europe, and they've been made to pay. And when he came off yesterday, that was the 20 minutes I was talking about. Hearts had a grip on the game at the start of the second half, and when he came off, they just seemed to completely lose grip of it again, and Hibs took over. So, but to answer your point, it's simply down to Lawrence Shankland's goals. So you can never hang your hat of a season on one guy scoring goals, which Hearts basically did last season. I mean, what was it, 31, 32 goals? That tells the story itself. Take that away and look what Hearts are now. They're also missing the influence of Frankie Kent at the back, who was probably one of the best centre-halves out with the old firm last season. He's out injured at the moment. So they've not got the problems to seek. Yesterday, I mean, when Neil Critchley came in, particularly at Tynecastle, he had this really high tempo, high energy game plan, got right in opposition's faces. It worked brilliantly against St Mirren in his first game, worked his second game, home to Ammonia, for Cyprus in the Europa Conference League, worked equally well, and the fans bought into it, and Tynecastle was a real force again, you know, that brilliant atmosphere he can get there. But it looked like yesterday, the pace Hibs had up top with Martin Boyle and Ellie Ewan, you know, blistering pace, the two of them. It looked like Hearts were kind of caught in between, whether to press high up and get caught with the pace of these two on the counter. And they kind of, as Andy said, it was hard to see what they were trying to do. I think they were too scared to push up, because Craig Halkett at the back, who these days isn't the most mobile. So the game plan fell apart. Hibs pulled them apart brilliantly. And Neil Critchley said himself at the end that he knows what he needs in January. It basically can't come quickly enough. Problem is, before then, they've got a tricky-looking trip to Ross County this weekend. And if they lose that, they're in deep trouble as it is, but if they lose that, then, boy, they've got their work cut out for the second half of the season.
Not to put you in the spot, Fraser, do you think they will lose that game, or do you think they'll get a result?
Right under the bus there, by the way. Right under the bus there, Daniel.
I'm happy to go under that bus and say they might scrape a draw, but I don't see them winning it. That's a horrible place to have to go when you're struggling for any sort of four-man goals. I mean, Hibs are full of goals now. See, exactly 1 month before that game yesterday, 26th of November, David Gray had to avoid defeat to Aberdeen Easter Road, and that was that ridiculous injury time. I think they went in injury time 2-1 down and ended up drawing 3-3. Rocky Bashiri's 96th minute equaliser, which many folks say saved David Gray's job. And for that moment onwards, Hibs have just taken off. You know, the last two games have been excellent, up at Pittodrie and yesterday. Real confidence flowing through the veins of this Hibs team now. They looked stronger than Hearts yesterday. It's been a while since we said that. Physically stronger. They were certainly faster, tidier on the ball, and since moving to a back three, they actually now look quite solid at the back as well, which was without doubt their downfall at the start of the season. So, David Gray looks like he's working a trick now at Easter Road, and be interesting to see where they go for here.
Mm-hmm. And that Ross County game on Sunday, that'll be a cracker. Right, time is getting away from us, guys, but Andy, let me throw this at you. Duncan in the comment section, we're now finally seeing the real Arne Engels, an absolute Rolls Royce. He's obviously referring to Celtic 4, Motherwell 0 yesterday. A pretty routine win for Celtic. I thought Motherwell were pretty good in the first half, but Celtic just too strong, and I guess an important win for Celtic given the result at Tannadice last week.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as I said when I was on with Keith the other day with regards to that game, Celtic aren't going to win every single game. What is remarkable is the fact that when they're having their wee, as I say, winter, not a slump, but lull maybe, just when the games are piling up, guys are getting tired, there's no time to breathe during this hectic festive schedule, that they've managed to keep grinding out results, whether it be wins or, as I say, that draw last week. So, listen, back at home, a couple of changes made to the team. Engels, listen, he's maybe not delivered the level of consistency and performance that you'd expect for a guy for 11 million quid, but he's still young, he's moving to a new country, and I think we should all heed the lesson of Nicholas Kuhn from last season before jumping to conclusions with new signings, because and we hear every manager banging on about this, that it does take time to settle into a new team. Some guys do it quicker than others, yeah, but that's just human nature. So, listen, the kids clearly get quality, and it would be no surprise to me if he goes on and kicks on from here to show that he's one of Celtic's best players. Yeah, it's been perhaps a slower start than Celtic would have been hoping for, but listen, his pedigree was clear from Germany. You don't spend £11 million on a guy from not to have something about him. So Celtic will be hoping that he can show that on a more consistent basis. But they've they'll certainly get high hopes for Arnie Engels in the months going forward.
I think Kuhn as well, and Kuhn has become so crucial to Celtic. Come on and scored yesterday, and without him at Tannadice last week, I'm not saying they looked devoid of any attacking threat, but he was definitely a noticeable absentee. That front three you can see on your screen there, Maeda, Kuhn, Kyogo. I mean that is Celtic's, go-to guys really.
Yeah, I mean they've established themselves. And again, you might not have said that at times last season. Last season you had Lewis Palmer in there, and obviously Kuhn was sort of in and out of the team, struggled with that sort of teeth issue, I think it was, wasn't it? After he first came in from Austria. So it shows that you do need to give guys time to readjust. I think it's going to be fascinating in terms of Maeda and Kuhn. In terms of, for me, they're the two leading candidates for Player of the Season. I think Maeda's he's got 12 goals. Is it Kuhn's on 13 now? Is that correct? I think in terms of Maeda, I think only 3 of them have been in the league, but I think his performances in Europe have been terrific. He's really been one of the guys that's really made that step up into Champions League and coped well. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see the two of them sort of trying to sort of duke it out for the top scorer or for Player of the Year. It's just interesting to see if Kyogo can sort of get himself in the mix. I don't think he's had perhaps the season people were expecting. He's not quite been as, how should we say, influential in this team this season. There's a wee bit of talk about interest from America. Interested to see how that one plays out. I think he's sort of 29-30 now. Celtic have done well is picking the right time to move guys on. They've maximised performances and then value out of them. So I think there's an argument to be made that if maybe this is the start of Kyogo, if he's past his peak in that sense, perhaps this is now the time to move him on and try and bring somebody else in. That'd be interesting. But listen, Celtic have got no shortage of options up front. They've got guys that can come back in. As you say, we're talking about Palmer. You've got James Forrest, who's out just now. I think that'll be the big boost for Brendan Rodgers going into the game in January 2nd. There was obviously a wee bit of chat. Fraser no better than me. He was up at the game at Tannadice last week. There was a wee bit of chat that maybe Kuhn might be missing out through injury. Looks like he's overcome that. Obviously scored a terrific goal. I think we got a wee bit of a deflection on it last night. So listen, Celtic are exactly where they want to be, flying. Dropped 4 points all year domestically. I think this calendar year, I think they've only lost twice. Am I correct in thinking? Game at Tynecastle last year, and then obviously that's 4-1 in Dortmund.
I think you're right.
I mean, like Celtic, as 20, they've got one more game to come. 2024 couldn't have went any better with them. They've got, to have come through a calendar year, only losing 2 games. Obviously, that game at Tynecastle, Brendan Rodgers wasn't too happy with some of the refereeing decisions that happened that day. I think it was Yang that gets sent off, wasn't it? Am I right in thinking?
A high boot, yeah.
Yep, and obviously the Dortmund one. Yeah, it's something we've seen happen to Celtic before, but they seem to have rectified that. Obviously, the performance in Atlanta a couple of weeks later on showed that they addressed some of the issues that affected them in that night. So, it's been a near perfect calendar year for Celtic.
Before we finish, Fraser, let me throw this at you. Alex, any Dons fans aiming abuse or criticism at Jimmy Tilleen needs to give themselves a shake. 1 win in 9 now for Aberdeen. 4-0 defeat at Kelly yesterday. Can Aberdeen stay up, Fraser? No, I'm sorry.
They maybe just got enough points in the bank. They should be safe, especially with the way Hearts are going. Top 6 might be a push now for Aberdeen. No, I'm joking. I would still back Aberdeen to finish 3rd, which is a fantastic season given where they were last year. They've fallen off a cliff though, and they need to arrest this slide quickly. I never quite jumped on the bandwagon, despite how stunning that run was at the start of the season. There was an awful lot of games in there they were scraping by a goal. They were finding ways to win, which in itself was an impressive because if you're not playing well, you have to find a way to win. But remember the game up at Ross County, I think it was a deep into injury time. Go to Celtic Park and get an incredible point, but they were absolutely battered that day, and it was proper defending like your life depends on it. Hearts, lucky to get a draw at Tynecastle, very lucky to beat Hearts at Pittodrie, but they kept getting wins, and I thought they can only get better. Unfortunately, since that semi-final scudding, and that was the one point I said, I'll make my mind up on Jimmy Tilleen. And it's very early, right? So I've not made my mind up on him yet, but I thought the big test for them would be when they hit the first road bump. And unfortunately, they've not recovered very well for that first bump. 1 win in 9 now, you say?
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was that long. I thought it was 7. Okay. 1 in 9, that's pretty horrendous for them. So they need to arrest that quickly. It's not like they're really suffering an injury crisis either, you know. It's the same players are putting out there. I just wonder if, I liked Nielsen and Shinnie when they were going through that good run, but I just wonder if the legs are going a wee bit in the middle of the park now. Other teams are maybe starting to suss them out. But there's been beaten, and then there's been absolutely hammered, and that was a terrible result down at Rugby Park. I didn't fancy them to win it, but I did not see them getting scudded 4-0, I have to admit.
So we all give Tilleen credit for just the way he inspired this team to be sort of better than the sum of their parts and to really take the fight to the Old Firm at the start of the season. Now he's going to have to show that he can inspire this team to get out of the slump, because this just looks like a team that have had their confidence rocked off. So that game at Hampden, and then sort of bad results have seemed to spiral one into another now. Obviously, I think I said previously that I felt that this hectic run through December, when you're playing 2 games a week, would be the real testing ground this team, because they hadn't faced that at the start of the season. When no firm were playing in Europe, they were able to put their feet up and rest and recover. And this is the first time they've had to do this, you know, going back to back. That should ease next month. They don't obviously Europe to contend with. I think they do have a couple of midweek games, but they should have certainly a longer time to recover than the 2 teams above them. But this is where Tilleen's going to have to show his man management skills, and just if he can inspire this team to rediscover their confidence. Because obviously it's great when you're winning games, because then results just seem to flow one to the next. But it's the same when you're losing games. You know, when your confidence is sapped, you just find yourself in a hole which you can't get out of. So this is his next big job, and you know, listen, I think obviously it's still Rangers only a point or 2 above them by game in hand. You know, second place isn't entirely out of reach, because you know we've seen this a Rangers team that can you know find itself dropping points on a regular basis. So if Aberdeen can get themselves back in any sort of level of form, then they can have a go at that. Certainly, 3rd place should be the absolute minimum given the start they had, but when you're on the kind of run, I think it's 7th out of, I think Fraser was talking about, I think it's 7th out of victories, 1 win and 9 total. So I think you know that needs to be addressed and pretty sharp. We've seen with Hibs, all it takes is for one big result, one morale boosting result, and you can turn things around. But it needs to happen pretty sharp.
I tell you what a fixture this weekend though. They go to Tannadice with Dundee United now breathing down their necks. New Firm Derby. I know some folk don't like that term, but it's definitely that should be a full Tannadice for that. Jim Goodwin will be licking his lips at the prospect of maybe turning over his old team. It's that's shame not to be the game of the weekend, isn't it?
Aye, that'll be a cracker.
Big test, huge test at Aberdeen. Look forward to that one.
Absolutely. And we'll be back on Sunday to discuss all of the games. I think that brings to the end of Friday's festive Hotline Live. Thank you so much for all the comments sent in. We really appreciate it, and thanks for watching at home. Andy, hope the back feels better soon. And Fraser, I hope the hangover isn't too debilitating today.
God, you've solved it. Cheers, lads.
Thanks for watching at home. Thanks very much, guys. I appreciate it. We'll be back on Sunday. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.